Have you ever felt like you're on the precipice of understanding something truly profound about yourself, yet it remains just out of reach? That's where Jeffrey Brunk comes in, a shamanic healer, Usui Reiki master, and spiritual counselor who will share his wisdom and understanding of the delicate balance of light and shadow. Explore the unseen realms with Jeffrey as your guide, one who has traversed these paths, facing his own wounds to emerge as an everyday shaman. Jeffrey's journey through shamanic practice, shadow work, and energy healing unveils the intricate ways in which these forces shape our physical, spiritual, and emotional well-being. Whether you're taking the initial steps towards inner betterment or you're further along on your path, there is something within this podcast that will resonate with you. Delve into the essence of what it means to navigate life's challenges with an everyday shaman's insight and discover the joy and purpose that can be found even in chaos. Join the Everyday Shaman in an extraordinary journey in which we will explore topics that could very well change the way you perceive the dance of light and shadow in your life and the world around you. A journey to greater self-awareness and the unseen world around us. Welcome to the Everyday Shaman.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the debut episode of the Everyday Shaman. I'm your host, Jeffrey Brunk, as you might have already surmised from the intro. And by the way, I changed that so I don't sound like I'm talking about myself in the third person. But I will have someone else reading it at some point, so it won't just be my voice you hear the whole time. I appreciate you joining me here. And this is not going to be your typical podcast that deals with shamanism. You know, the history, the practices, the religious, quasi-religious aspects of it. Although we'll touch on some of those things because they are important. But we're really going to be looking at more of how it is practice. It's a practice of gaining a connection to the earth, to others around us, to the universe, to everything. Shamanism, in the way that I practice it, is a way of seeing modern and traditional medicine, modern and traditional or even ancient healing techniques, religions of all sorts, be it Christian, Islamic, Judaism, you name it. There's a collision of all of these things, religion, medicine, healing, the modern type versus the traditional type, but it also includes science. So we will look at ways that science figures into this and things that have been proven, such as vibrations, frequencies, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, because everything that is done within shamanic work or energy healing work, be it through the modalities that I practice and even the traditional ways, the drumming of native cultures that use drumming as a way to get into trance, the tones and frequencies of sound and sound healing. I think of singing bowls, of light therapy, the frequencies of light and sound, and the differences between earth frequencies, lower frequencies, and higher, which I call divine frequencies, the ones that bring healing. The higher frequencies bring healing. The lower frequencies tend to be ones in our world that are more prominent, yet they bring on more dis-ease, hyphen in between the dis and the ease, which then can snowball into disease. And I compare that as the stress-causing ulcers scenario. So we're going to delve into a lot of these things over the course of the next several weeks and onwards, I hope. I have some very special guests lined up already, everyday people like ourselves, as well as people that are professionals in their fields of psychology and science and religion that we'll talk to. And it's not a place for contention, or this podcast is not meant to breed contention or to be in place of argument. It's a place of understanding and understanding oneness and our oneness with each other, because we are all from the same place. And from the same place, I mean, whether you want to call it God or the creator or the source or whatever it may be to you, we're all part of that same energy. It's within us all. It cannot be destroyed. It can be altered. It can be focused, which is your intention, which is extremely important. but it can also be something that is, the word is transmuted, and it lives within us as part of the shadow, that there's a balance in this energy of dark and light. It's the shadow, and it's been explored in psychology through those such as Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud to some extent, amongst others. We will look at those, and we'll talk in depth about those things. I will also read from shamanic journeys that I have taken for others, especially over the last 5 years, and read some of the summaries that I do, because when I do a shamanic journey for someone, I write a summary with every single detail that it's within it. Those summaries and those journeys are meant specifically for those people, but there are things within there that would resonate with a lot of people. I do them without adding any of my own interpretations. It's specifically for the person, but there's always something to be learned from those journeys, from those summaries. I will tell more about myself as well. I've got quite a story, and I do have a guest lined up that has lived with me throughout the worst times of what is called, I have recently learned, or shaman sickness. Some people have referred to it as the dark night of the soul, which is not a night, believe me. It lasts weeks, months, years, however long you resist. We'll tell about her own searching and her struggles of finding this balance within herself as she's found it within me. In addition, we're going to get into some of the more obvious topics that people always have questions about. What is my purpose? Why am I here? Why can't I be happy like the rest of these people are happy? When you're at church and you see them throwing their hands in the air and coming out and shaking hands, why can't I have the things that other people have as far as happiness and joy in my life? We'll also look at what happens after you die. What about spirit? What about soul? What about soul loss? Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? There's so many questions. One of the ones that sticks in my mind the most here recently, mostly because it seems so prominent on television with all of these doggone ghost hunter shows. We'll get into ghosts. I am not going to be one that's going to be talking about all of the paranormal things in great detail, because I am not a ghost hunter. I would be a ghost clearer, sending energies back to a light, because there are energies that are all around us all the time. We don't see them. It could be energies of people that once lived near us or we knew. It could be the energies of plants. It could be the energies of animals. There are so many. Everything is composed of energy, and traumas often leave imprints. There's an uncertainty because consciousness is another whole thing, but it's a part of that whole argument of ghosts. So we'll talk about that as well. What I'd really like to focus on in this initial episode is the fact that so many people seem to be searching, and they don't know what they're searching for. In particular, it seems like more young people in their 20s. I've even had children as young as 10, some even a little bit younger, but children as young as 10 that are old souls, but they are misunderstood and they're searching. And it's almost as if there's a hole, there's a void in their life. Personally, for me, I grew up, and in my generation, and I'm not an old guy, but I'm old enough that in my generation, it seemed to be a strict code that you followed as you grew up. You know, you went to school, you graduated from high school, you got into a good college, you graduated from college, hopefully with good grades, and then you found a great job. This is ideal world now. You found the great job, made some money, then you met the right person, while maybe you were in that job or prior. So you get married, and then there is a house. You buy a house, first starter home, and then you have children. Then you move to another house, which is probably in a cul-de-sac, and then eventually you die. That was the plan. That was the plan for at least me and for a lot of men. And I had been searching my entire life. I'd been searching since I was a child, not sure, why don't I fit in? I knew something was different. I had a lot of acquaintances. I had untold number of jobs and careers throughout my life, and none of them seemed to fill that void. My first marriage of 19 years did not fill that void. Children did not fill that void. There was something I personally was missing and needed. I see that in so many others, especially younger people, that there's a fear associated with wanting to find out what's missing, because finding out what is not there, even though you want it, even though you know that it's something that you need, it's an internal voice and you know that you need it, that's whispering to you, you know there's something there, but there's a fear associated with listening to that voice and finding what is missing, because especially as a younger person in your 20s, 30s, you have friends, you have family, and what happens when you find it and you change? What if you change your way of thinking about things? What if all of a sudden you grew up in the South or wherever and church had always been the thing, going to church on Sunday, going to Mass, going however many times, going through the rituals, and you suddenly realize this is not what it's about. I've been told, you find Jesus and you're happy, your problems, you confess your sins, and then everything's gone away. Everything's fine. You're forgiven. Well, no, it didn't fill that void for me. And I had gone through, believe me, every level to the point of almost starting divinity school at Duke Divinity, trying to find that feeling, to find that joy that people seem to come out of those doors with on Sunday morning around noon, before they went home and sat in their chairs and put on the game and popped open a beer or whatever they did. Another episode. I was looking for that, and I would say, forgive me, I would do all that, but I never felt it, not until I went through my shaman sickness, where I fought the calling of listening to that little voice inside, that void. And that call came in a lot of ways, and it was through song lyrics. One of the first ways that it came through, it was through just signs that I knew were different, and you pay attention to, but then you let them go. And so many people struggle with those, because when I changed it's not that I became pious, Lord, no. It's that I suddenly looked at everything differently. It's like, why am I doing what I'm doing? What does making this money matter? Does having this job matter? What's the point of this? I mean, money, of course, we all need. But what is the reasoning? Am I just following what I'm taught instead of listening? And so much of our world does that. And so those people that do go through these changes, there is a fear of being judged and excommunicated from the family or from a group or from a church or whatever, because all of a sudden you're not like them, and it's difficult. It's very difficult to deal with. I have run into so many of these people. So I wanted to talk about searching. People who are searching will look for ways to fill that void, be it through alcohol or drugs or sex or all of the above, or looking into church, or looking into, God forbid, cults, which I'm going to say it. Yeah, a lot of churches are, a lot of religions are, a lot of organized religions are, but not everyone within churches. Bad. There are spiritual people within churches. Or immersing yourself in the negativity of the day, be it news, or whether you're just so involved with sports or whatever, and mired in your job. It's a way of escaping that voice, that void. You're trying to fill it. You're wanting to do things for your family, for yourself, for your community, your friends, your co-workers. But it's not fulfilling for you, and that is what people are struggling with when they search. Now, this can go on for days, weeks, months, years. Really, it's not days. It may be weeks, but many weeks. Most times, the searching goes on for years. I was 44 when my shaman sickness kicked in, and I call it the size 12 universal boot in the keister. That's not the words I'm using, but this is a clean broadcast. So it's a way of saying, hey, you're going to listen. There's a plan for you. Your purpose is not to be given. It's not given to you. The divine never gives straight yes, no answers, but it leads you on the path to discovery of who you are and how to navigate. and it requires a lot in searching that people aren't used to. We live in a world of constant chaos and static. There is no off switch on life anymore. There is no off switch with social media, with television, with everything in our faces all of the time. And it takes so much patience and really intestinal fortitude to pull ourselves away from these distractions. But the only way to really move forward in the search is to lay down those distractions, avoid those distractions, even for a few moments a day, a couple of times a day, whenever you can, to go outside and appreciate nature and just listen. You know, you can never quiet your mind to a point where there's no thoughts coming in. Yeah, it's just totally impossible. But you can let the ones go that are plaguing you, that are worrisome, that are thoughts that really have no merit. If they're not thoughts, actions, or ideas that benefit you or others in a positive way, if they cause fear and anxiety and worry, then you need to let them go. Just to let them go. And it sounds easy. It's much easier said than done. And it often takes many, many, many years to do that. And I don't want to discourage anyone listening from that practice, because for me, I quieted my mind, quote unquote, in the most unexpected way. And it was over a course of 3 months, working for a job I hated, away from home in Florida, and living on the floor, sleeping on the floor in the house of a Jehovah's Witness who was a family member that I am not Jehovah's Witness, never been associated with them. And oddly enough, he never tried to convert me or take me to a kingdom hall. But I was at Cocoa Beach and was able to go out on the beach. My job allowed me in sales of a product that I will not recount the name of the company, but it was a crap job. It was a pyramid scheme type job. I look back now on the reason for me taking that was in order for me to spend those months to quiet my mind. And I would spend days on the beach at my lunch hour, just watching and listening to the waves in silence. Had no television at the house. Being a Jehovah's Witness, there was no television. Did have music, because I love music. Music plays a huge role in my life, and music has been a great part of becoming who I am and carried many messages for me during my upheaval, let's say it was. So when I did return to Virginia 3 months later, it was like listening to fingernails on a chalkboard to have the television on. When a commercial would come on, or even having the television on, it was horrible. And it's not that I was living in a cave or living in a monastery where there was total quiet. It was actually louder where I was living in Florida around Cocoa than it was where I lived in Virginia at the time. But my mind was quieter and I listened to more, which brings me to another topic we will get into, the psychological aspects of shamanism and how they conflict with the modern medical psychiatry practice or psychiatric practices of here, take this pill. This will make you feel better. This will make you better. It doesn't. I only say this to say when you are searching and you have that void, you have the answers within you. And what's important to remember is that it is not what you hear with your ears. It's not the constant barrage of friends, family, television, news hosts, blah, 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 and what you hear and listen that you believe. It's what that whisper is that screams at you from the heart, from inside, that we all have. There's where the connection lies within all of us, and it's listening to that. And there is a huge difference between hearing and listening. You can do this and find that. You don't find all of the answers in that quest of searching for meaning, of searching for why am I here? What is my purpose? What happens after I die? Am I doing the right thing? There's so many questions that go through your head that have unknown answers, and some of them are meant to be unknown, but you learn as you go. And it is possible to get those answers, but it's in stages. There is no one answer. There is no one right way of finding any answers. There's no one right way of practicing meditation or a healing technique or a shamanic technique. There are so many. But if it's done with intention, it makes the search easier. I will use the example of going to church. Again, I'm sorry if I'm railing on church or focusing on church too much, but if you sit in most churches, be it Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, no matter which one, there's a program and that they hand you, and you're expected to sit, stand, sing, say a prayer, and you watch the people in the church and watch how they say the prayers and listen to them. And it's more of a routine than it is a heartfelt, intentionally based thing. The greatest prayer I know growing up I was ever told there was the Lord's Prayer. And at one point I saw that people, they just sort of went, it's almost mumbling through it. And that is not a prayer with intention. That is a prayer meant to be, here, I'm just saying the words, what's next, pass the plate, sing a song, whatever it may be. And intention is the greatest energetic force that we ourselves can control. With shamanism, with doing shamanic journeys the way I do, with drumming tracks and setting my intention for a person or for an event or whatever it may be, I'm able to shed my ego, to set it aside, become a vessel for that person's betterment or for that, situations, problems being resolved, whatever it may be. But it's the intention, and it's basically prayer on steroids. When you're able to focus your intention on that search, you may not always like what you come across and find, especially about yourself, and that's a hard thing to do. But when you do, and you embrace those things about yourself, you own them then. This is a part of the shadow that we have. As humans, our flesh is shadow, or we have a divine within us, we have the shadow within us, dark and light. Consider the yin-yang symbol, light and dark, but in that center curved line, there is shadow. That's us. That's where we are. And there must be a balance there. And to maintain that balance, or to regain that balance, you have to accept those things about yourself that aren't necessarily pleasant. Doesn't mean that you accept them and go, woe is me, I'm this, then this, and I did this and that, because what's past is past. It's what is now is who you are. And when you embrace those shadow portions of yourself, you recognize them. So from then on, it becomes a practice where you're recognizing things about yourself, things about others, and you're choosing how you will allow those things to affect you. And when you do that, you raise your vibration from being woe is me to being I can handle this, to being I'm in control of this. And ultimately, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to find this answer. And it's not an ego-driven thought process. It is a heart-centered process. And using that shadow as a weapon against the darker things within the world, because you have now grasped and understand it, and allows you to understand better yourself and the way the world works and the way that you're able to play a part within it. And it snowballs from there in a way that finding those answers about who you are, what the purpose of your life is, am I doing the right thing? Especially when you know you're not happy. If you're not happy getting out of bed and going to work, why are you doing it when you spend so much of your life going to work? Why go to work every day for years not happy or fulfilled and having that void? It's out of fear. It's out of fear of change, of the unknown. And the unknown can be intimidating, but it doesn't have to be frightening. So much in this world now, as far as the media and social media goes, is based upon really intimidation and instilling fear, a lot of propaganda, a lot of hatred. There is so much divisiveness that it's tough to make these choices for yourself, about yourself, without being ridiculed, without being mocked, without being pushed away from, and I know people pushed away from family and friends and losing family and friends because you're not the same person that you once were. It's what they think. Who are you? You're different. So that is not my problem that the other people have. It sounds crass and it sounds harsh, but it really is a truth. Truths, when you feel them, resonate with you. For me, they reverberate through my body when I feel a truth, when I have a truth and know a truth about myself or about something else. And one thing that I've learned is that when people think poorly of you, or they mock you or belittle you or are angry with you, can't forgive you, forgive yourself, accept yourself. And if these feelings that they have, if they linger, it's really doing them more harm than good. That is their problem, not yours. That will hamper your search for all of these other things that are missing within yourself if you try to make the other person, either make them happy, fit into the molds that they expect you to fit into for them in their lives. That's not your purpose for being. I cannot tell anyone what their purpose for being here is, because purpose changes. You get to one point in your life and it's one thing, and then the divine takes you another way. But what has happened prior to that point helps you along the way in the next step, in the next phase, and that continues throughout life. And you have to remain vigilant in recognizing these changes about yourself, or recognizing when feelings of despair or anger or frustration come up. We all have those. But when we recognize them, we own them. And it's easier over time to shed those things, to recognize them for what they are and just let them go. Because most of the time there are things that make no sense as far as holding on to. Why hold on to anger over someone at a stoplight who is sitting at the light while it's green and you have to honk the horn? Does that solve any purpose? Then that's a very minor example, but it is a good example because that's everyday life. And even when you start to gain awareness of yourself and you start to find answers in your search for meaning and for what is missing in your life, life goes on and you still deal with the things daily that can cause a lot of frustration, can cause anger, uncertainty. In order to move forward through that, you have to let those things go. You parse them. This is something that I need to address, and this is something that is just a bunch of crap that I can let go because it's doing me no good. What can I do about this? Sure, the person at the light sat there for 5 seconds while it was green. Well, what's the big deal? Am I going to be 5 seconds late for work? So what? 5 seconds late for work, 5 seconds late for an appointment, 5 seconds late to church, whatever. Probably make that time up anyway on the way because you'll speed, because you'll be angry. But then you realize that was a stupid thing. Why am I angry about this? Why am I frustrated over something someone else is doing when it has nothing to do with me? What can I do about this situation that's happening where it really doesn't involve me? Sort of does, but it really doesn't involve me. So why am I so frustrated about it? Why am I so passionate about whatever it may be that is just really tearing you apart inside? It hampers your search. And we all search, and that never stops, just like we never stop learning. I don't know if anything within this has resonated with anyone. Like I said, this is an inaugural debut episode, solo, and I have so many talking points that I really want to talk about, and it's hard for me to just focus on one because they are all so tied together. When we start talking more about shamanism, the light and darkness within us, embracing those things, the traumas that come from both ancestral and today's traumas. We all have things that are minor and major traumas that we go through, to creating safe spaces within ourselves and within our homes, and places that we can go in times of what I call good selfishness, when we're in amongst groups of people or around others that these people are in a place that is low. They are angry, they are sad, they are woeful, they are just energy vampires. good selfishness, you take yourself out of the situation. And if the people or the person doesn't like that or they question that, that is not really a problem of ours. It is a problem of theirs, because in order to help yourself and to help others and to continue on your journey to self-awareness, gaining those answers and filling those voids, you have to take care of yourself in order to get to the place where you can help the person that is unknowingly trying to bring you down to their level. In this world we live in, everyone wants, and I say everyone broadly, and I don't mean that literally, but it seems most want to bring you to their level. If your understanding of things doesn't match theirs, then you're thought of differently. If your political views do not match someone else's political views, even though you may know the person in a friendly way, as a neighbor, all of a sudden, boom, there's a divide, and that's ridiculous. And so to take yourself out of those situations, just see the people for who they are, because they're also on the journey of their own in their search for self-awareness. They're in search of something. And to belong to a political movement or a church organization or to whatever it may be, if it helps them to find what they're looking for, great. But in most cases, there could be something to be gleaned from it, but it's not going to get them to where they want to be, at least not long term. So I don't want to go down any rabbit holes in this podcast. This is going to be an open and honest podcast, and I'm going to explain how I do what I do. So we're going to talk about a little bit of the differences between doing things the shamanic way, as well as comparing that to Reiki. There are good Reiki masters, I'm sure. And there are those that just want to do it as a business, as a fad, as sort of like a spa treatment. And I consider, and I'm sure I'm going to probably maybe see a little bit of a look of disgust invisibly here on some of the listeners' faces, but I look at Reiki as being a Band-Aid in a way. And don't get me wrong, because I have studied and am certified in Usui Reiki as a Reiki master. It took me 4 years to do that, not because I failed tests, but because I took time in between the stages to learn and to grow. I've seen so much Facebook, become a Reiki master in 8 weeks. It's like, yeah, give me a break. You can't become a Reiki practitioner online. It takes effort, and it takes focus, and it takes, like shamanism, like prayer, it takes great intention. So we'll talk about the differences with that, the differences between needs, feelings, emotions, deceptions, wants, and the signs that we get, because there are always signs coming at us that we sometimes realize and sometimes don't. One of the earliest for me, when my shaman sickness started to kick in, was a lyric from a Jimmy Buffett song. I've always been a big Jimmy Buffett fan. I've heard all of his music for many, many years. Not necessarily all because it's beach and party music, but because I believe the man was a great philosopher, if you listen to a lot of his lyrics. But the lyric that hit me most was from the song Growing Older, Not But Not Up, and it was the lyric that stuck with me first and foremost was, I'd rather die while I'm living than live while I'm dead. Something as simple as that, and it made me start to think. Songs have done that, and songs that I have heard throughout my lifetime, and I thought I knew all the lyrics, and I did know all the lyrics, but hearing a certain one at a certain time, and a lyric that I would go, I don't remember that lyric being in that song, speaking to me, to something deeper than just my ears. For me, music is great in that way. Being in nature is amazing, and just watching and feeling the unseen in the wind. Hearing the rustling of the trees and watching every small movement on the ground, knowing that there's some sort of life there and that all of that is interconnected. And you start to get a sense of that connection, especially outdoors. I will be talking about things that people will think I'm crazy for. And I thought about this when I was writing my book. I thought when I wrote that and people read it, that people would think I was crazy because it involved what most people call angels. I do not call them that. I call them divine essences because they are all from a constant stream of light. And I can only describe it as being like light going through a prism, how they separate. They're not winged creatures. It's much more than that. The darkness, elements of darkness, they're all around us. we can connect to these things, because everyone can be an everyday shaman to some degree with intention, a change of self, and with even just filling the void quarter tank, it begins and you understand more. It takes effort on one's behalf, on everyone's behalf, to grow, to see that growth continue, whether it be physical health improvements or emotional health improvements or a change in the spiritual aspect of your life. There is a requirement for one to do things for themselves. It is not a one-way street. It's a give and take. And the more you're in balance, the more it does for your betterment. If that makes sense, I hope it does. If it doesn't, we'll discuss that more. But I want to thank you for joining me on this initial episode. I look forward to a lot of the guests that I have scheduled coming up, especially the men guests that I have, the male guests that I have, because out of all the ones that I have worked for across the world, I can probably count on two hands the number of men that have willingly come to me for assistance. And I will say this because I'm a guy, so I'm allowed. Men have that thing about there's this image of, I've got to be strong. I can't show emotion. I'm not going to, I can't cry. I can't go for help because I'll show weakness, or what are my friends going to think of me? Blah, 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 blah. Excuses. Give it up, guys. These guys that are coming on are not wimpy guys. And actually, anyone that admits to themselves who they really are and accepts themselves, whether others appreciate it or like it or not, they're tough guys. They could be Barney Fife-looking guys, and they are the baddest mofos in town because they have control of something even a Arnold Schwarzenegger type guy does not have, and that's themselves and the shadow within them. So I look forward to these guests. I look forward to all of the guests that I have scheduled coming up, because everyone had something different to their stories, how they got to where they were, their practices and modalities, how things interconnect. There are no coincidences. So the synchronicities of having these people on the show and the ways of finding them, then the professionals that really will add insight. And you'll be surprised at the ones that see the correlation and the understanding between the unseen realms, as is in shamanism, as being crucial to the healing, emotional, psychological, and physical healing of individuals. Modern medical doctors, psychologists. I will not throw psychiatrists in there because that is just a pill game. There is a great amount of people, even within science, that understand that what is unseen, the realms of shamanism, the upper realms, the lower realms, this middle realm we live upon where everything is seen, everything we see, we believe. Don't believe it, because there is much more that you can't see with your eyes. There is much more of that around you than you can see with your eyes. That I guarantee you. And a lot of things are things that will be difficult to grasp or to understand, but they're there and must be acknowledged, because it's not a flat earth, but it's not a flat one-dimensional, three-dimensional, even four-dimensional world. It is far beyond that, and science has proven that, scientists and physicists, and it'll be interesting. And I look forward very much so to involving you, the listener, and having some of you who are hearing this tell me your story. What has happened? Bring you to a state of awareness. What has helped you to start filling that void, or if you filled it, to fill that void? Because there is no one way, again, to do things, to do any of these things. And I still learn. Every practitioner learns. We would be happy to hear that. So thank you for joining me. Hope this all made a little bit of sense to you. So just remember, everything is energy. Nothing is impossible. There is far more out there than you're able to physically see and hear. And so much lies within you. And to recognize that and embrace it is the first step. Taking that first step means that you are searching. Keep on searching. You will take on a new perspective about life, yourself, those around you, the world around you, both seen and unseen. Just remember, the road goes on forever, but the searching never ends. You just have to listen and trust. Until next time, I'm Jeffrey Brunk. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Everyday Shaman. Please join me each week as we will explore new topics that I hope will inspire, educate, astound, and possibly confound listeners. If you have topic suggestions, if anything in this episode resonated with you, or you care to be a guest, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me through my website, www.everydayshaman.net, or email me at jeffreybrunk@everydayshaman.net. You can also find my personal memoir, The Everyday Shaman, One Man's Journey into the Miraculous, on my website and on Amazon.com.